What's up, guys? My name is Ethan. Welcome to Splash City. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe. Let's get right into it. Today, the NBA regular season kicks off tonight with two games, the Lakers and the Warriors, and of course the Nets and the Bucks are also playing tonight. So 4 teams in action, and I thought, what better way to kick it off than to make a tier list of NBA teams, my official predictions for where I think teams are going to finish going into the regular season. Now, I'm going to make an important clarification here, so pay attention. This tier list is for regular season standings only. I'm going to rank these teams relatively where I think they're going to finish at the end of the regular season. This is not a playoff tier list. This is not a tier list saying these are the teams that I think are going to win the title. These are the teams that I think are not going to be very good, et cetera, et cetera. This is purely for where I think teams are going to finish at the end of the regular season. I've kind of separated them into little buckets, like little sections of teams where I have like 3, 4, 5, 6 teams in each little category here. And that is not necessarily the same order that I would have them in for winning the title. For example, the Lakers, I probably wouldn't pick them to get the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. It's a veteran team. They're probably going to take some nights off. They might deal with some injuries here and there, but when the time comes, if they're healthy for the playoffs, obviously they're going to be a big threat to win the NBA Finals. So that's the distinction here, right? Is this is a regular season thing for where I think teams are going to finish, not necessarily for the playoffs. So that's the important distinction. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. And then these tiers are going to be loosely ordered, not exactly, but from left would be the best team in the tier, and going over to the right would be slightly down to the worst. So we're going to start here with the Orlando Magic. They might be the worst team in the league, them or OKC. I'll just put them both in here. I think these are the 2 worst teams in each conference, and I believe that the Magic and the Thunder are both going to be in conversations for the number 1 overall pick. Not much to say about them. They're clearly teams that are rebuilding, developing young talent. I'll move right along here. And then also I'm going to throw in the Houston Rockets, if I can move them over. The Houston Rockets and where's the other team? The Detroit Pistons. I think both of them are slightly better than OKC and Orlando, but I still would have them near the bottom of their conferences. Both these teams already have, a pretty good amount of young talent. Obviously, the number 1 and number 2 overall picks from this past draft. The Pistons have a couple of veterans, Kelly Olynyk, Jeremy Grant, that should help them to be at least a little bit competent during the regular season. And the Rockets, their team is very, very young, but they do actually have, quite a bit of upside. If Jalen Green has a really nice year, Kevin Porter Jr. Going into his 3rd, maybe 4th season, I don't remember. But they do have, the Rockets have quite a bit of young talent still, and I think they should be pretty fun to watch. So I have them just a tick above OKC and Orlando, but not enough to put them up a tier. And then the other team that I have kind of floating, I almost kind of want to put this team in between the Cavaliers. I'll put them up there for now as a quote-unquote play-in threat. I think they're closer to these 4 teams, but they are, if everything goes right for them, I could see them making a push for the 10th seed in the Eastern Conference, but there are a lot of good teams in the East. But the Cavaliers do have, a significant amount of talent, and Darius Garland is poised to take a big leap this year. Colin Sexton is already pretty good. They have a couple of veterans, Ricky Rubio should help them out a little bit, and so this team feels like they're ready to at least make a miniature leap this season. They just don't have quite enough talent to compete with a lot of the other teams that are around them in the standings, but I do think they're slightly better than these bottom 4, so that's where I'm going to put them. All right, so up next here, I'm going to continue along with this tier. We have, I'm going to throw the San Antonio Spurs in this group as a threat to make the play-in tournament. The Spurs lost a lot of talent over the offseason. DeMar DeRozan, Rudy Gay, Patty Mills, a couple of other guys, veterans decided to leave this team, which makes sense. They're going in on a more full youth movement. They've now got quite a bit of young talent. Just looking at this roster, it's hard for me to see the guys who are really going to help them, compete in the really tough Western Conference. There's just a lot of teams that are better than them in the West, and so that's why I have them here, just because I feel like even though Greg Popovich is the coach and they should at least be, semi-competent, I just don't feel like they have quite enough to compete with a lot of these other really good teams in the Western Conference. So that's where I'm going to put them. Another team that I have in this group, I'm just going to go with a couple of the West teams here. I'll do them both at once. The Kings and the Pelicans. I don't know who I feel is better between those two. I'd probably go with New Orleans, but they're already dealing with a Zion injury, and so if Zion is, going to miss a lot of time, I I just don't really know where the upside is coming from with this roster. Brandon Ingram's going to be pretty good. They traded for Valanciunas over the offseason, so he should be okay as well. But the Pelicans, I just feel like, yes, they probably made an upgrade at coach, and yes, the roster is maybe constructed a little bit better this year, and presumably Zion should be better this season than he was last year. But if he's already dealing with an injury, he looks like he might be a little out of shape. That's a little concerning for me. So that's why I think the Pelicans, I'd maybe have them up a spot if Zion was healthy to begin the season, but he's not. So that's where I have them here. The Kings, I think, are just going to be about the same as last year. They maybe got a little bit better. Davion Mitchell should help them. They signed a couple of centers in free agency, but realistically, they should be about the same as they were last year. Pending a potential Buddy Hield deal, I know that they almost dealt him in the offseason, and it seems like they're just waiting for the right opportunity, so maybe he gets traded midseason and something big happens there. But as of right now, I think the Kings are definitely just going to be in this tier here. So I have, the Kings, the Pelicans, and the Spurs all as threats to potentially make the play-in, but definitely not a lock for me. And then I'll throw the Timberwolves in there as well. I think, honestly, this might be my hottest take, but I think the Timberwolves are better than any of these other three teams, to be honest with you. Like I said, if Zion was healthy, I'd have the Pelicans up, but there's just so much uncertainty with him right now that I have to have them lower. So I would take the Timberwolves over any of those other three, honestly. I think they're a real threat to make the play-in this year, assuming that Cat, D'Lo, Anthony Edwards are all playing together, because last season their record with those three was, if I'm not mistaken, it was around 500, maybe a little bit above that. So they're actually not a bad team, and I feel like they made some upgrades this offseason. They didn't have a draft pick, but they're having Leandro Bolmaro come over from overseas. They drafted him in the first round last year, added a couple of other guys. Taurean Prince on this roster should maybe help them out a little bit, and re-signed a lot of their young guys, and so everybody should be coming back, and I feel like this team is ready to take the next step, like I said, assuming health for them this season, but I do think that the Timberwolves are going to be better than they were last year, so I'll put them there. Let me throw in the Charlotte Hornets, the Wizards, and the Pacers, and honestly the Raptors too. All four of those teams from the Eastern Conference I think are in about the same boat. If I had to order them here, I'd probably do it like this. Maybe I'd have the Hornets over Washington, but it's close. So yeah, Washington and the Hornets I think are in about the same spot here. The Wizards are deep. They have a lot of talent. Bradley Beal's obviously really good, and they have, I kind of talked about this in a video that I made, but they have like 12, 13 players that probably should be in their rotation. So they've just got a lot of depth, and hopefully Wes Unseld Jr., who's their new coach, he can figure out what he wants to do with this team. But they've just got a lot of guys, even though the ceiling might not be super high for them. The Hornets are young, super athletic. They should be really fun to watch. They're going to fly up and down the court this year. A lot of this is pending on the health of Gordon Hayward, because I've seen a lot of people talk about this. When Hayward was in the lineup for Charlotte last season, they were really good. They were a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. Then he got hurt. They dipped all the way down to 10 and they got their butts kicked in the first round of the play-in tournament. So Charlotte, I think, is a lot of that is dependent on whether Gordon Hayward is healthy or not. We'll just have to see. But I do think they got better this offseason. So maybe they're going to be slightly more well-adjusted, even if Hayward does have to miss some time. The Indiana Pacers are good. They made a big upgrade at coach, putting in Rick Carlisle instead of Nate Bjorkgren, who was really bad for them last year. And hopefully TJ Warren's able to be healthy. Karis LeVert can play some more games. They should be better than they were last year. Chris Duarte coming in as a rookie should be able to contribute right away. And then the Raptors, it's really tough for me to place them. I'm not sure what to do with Toronto. They're probably going to be better than they were last year. Obviously, they actually get to have home games this season. They get to play in Toronto rather than having to be stuck in Tampa Bay, away from their family, away from their community, all that stuff. So the Raptors should be better, but obviously losing Kyle Lowry really stings, so that's why I have them down here. The roster is not amazing, but they are super well coached, and they've got some young talent that could pop. So those 4 Eastern Conference teams, I have them all there. This order is not exactly how I'd have it, just because I kind of separated the East and the West, but they're kind of all in the same bucket, and then Cleveland's maybe a half step below. Okay, up next, this tier is for teams that will probably be in the play-in tournament. They might be a little bit above that, maybe a little bit below, but these are teams that are probably going to end up in the play-in tournament for their conference. So first I have the Clippers here. This is just based on Kawhi Leonard's health. We don't know if he's going to play this season. If he does, it's going to be late in the year. Can Paul George keep them afloat without Kawhi? That's a tough question to answer, and the West is so competitive that that might cause them to suffer a little bit. So without Kawhi Leonard, if Paul George misses some time with an injury, this is pretty clearly a play-in team. They are a relatively deep roster, but I just don't know if they have the upside to compete with a lot of these other teams in the Western Conference that are really, really, really good up top. So I have the Clippers there. I'm also going to throw throw Portland, and I'll probably throw Dallas in this bucket as well. If my math is correct, I think at least one of them will be above that. But I have all three of these teams kind of in the same boat. Portland, I think, did they get better over the offseason? Probably. Larry Nance Jr. is a good fit with what they do. But, who knows with the Damian Lillard situation? They didn't make a ton of other moves in the offseason, and, health has been an issue for them at points. So I'm going to drop them down a little bit. And then the Mavericks, I just don't think they got that much better. Luka, should be better than he was last year, but how much more of a jump is there for him? That's a tough question, right? I don't know if he's going to be able to be like that much better than he was last year because he's already so good, right? So if they didn't make any other, like on paper changes to the roster, then how much better can they be, especially in a conference that's just getting better all the time? That's a tough one, right? So I have the Mavericks in that spot. I'm going to throw the New York Knicks in there. That's not me disrespecting what they did last year, but I do think part of it was kind of some magic that just happens to teams sometimes where they just end up playing better than they actually are. And so I think the Knicks are still definitely a good team. I expect them to be in the playoffs, but I think they might have to fight their way through the play-in tournament to get there, especially with teams like the Heat and the Bulls and the Hawks. They're all going to be better in the regular season, at least, if you go by my standards. So I think that it's going to be tougher for the Knicks to repeat what they did last year, just because I felt like the conference got better around them, and it might have been not necessarily a flash in the pan, but maybe they played just a little bit better than they actually are. And then I'll throw one more team in here. I'll put the Grizzlies here. I think the Grizzlies could potentially make it even higher than the play-in tournament. I think they're going to be better this year. Valanciunas was big for them last year, and losing him does suck. But they just have so much young talent and guys who are going to be better this season than they were last year. This just feels like a team that's about to pop any second now. They're really, really well coached. Like I said, a lot of young talent. Jaren Jackson Jr. should presumably play this season. Like, he only played, 11 games last year. So he's healthy. He just got a big extension, and I think that will help them out quite a bit. John Morant should make another leap going into year 3 for him. So the Grizzlies, I almost toyed with the idea of putting them above here. And if they do finish better than the Clippers and the Blazers and the Mavericks, then this is where they will be, because I only have, them and 5 other Western Conference teams down here. So if they are better than all 3 of these teams, which I think they very well could be, I would have them in 3 to 6, but I am going to put them down here. If I had to order it, I'd probably go something like, let me go Portland, Memphis, Clippers. I'd probably put the Mavericks here. So that's how I'd order that. And maybe, I don't know. Those 4 are really interchangeable to me. A lot of it depends on the health of Kawhi, of course, and the health of these other 3 teams, if they deal with injury, obviously. But that's how I'd have this tier. Really, really tough to order those teams, though, especially those Western Conference ones, because who knows what's going to happen there. It's going to be a bloodbath. Okay, for this next bit, I'm going to start with the Eastern Conference. You'll notice I have 7 Eastern Conference teams down here, and these tiers are listed 3 through 6. So I'm just going to put 7 teams in the top 2 tiers from the East, because it's so tough for me to separate. So just keep in mind one of these teams will be in the play-in, but I just had no way to separate them. So I'm going to go with Boston, Chicago. Honestly, I'd probably put Atlanta here. I might move them up in a second. I think that's all I'm comfortable doing from the East. So Boston, I think, is going to be better this year. We'll see how the coaching change goes, right? Obviously, Brad Stevens was amazing for them, but Ime Udoka could easily be just as good, so we'll just have to wait and see on him. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, both potentially getting better this season. Both of them were already really good last year. Robert Williams may be having a good year for them as well. Peyton Pritchard going into year 2. Romeo Langford, Aaron Nesmith, all those young guys have potentially, could potentially make an impact. So I'm comfortable saying that Boston, last year they definitely underperformed, but I have a feeling they're going to bounce back this year. Chicago, I'm relatively high on compared to a lot of other people. Obviously, they looked really good in the preseason, but they, added a lot of guys in free agency. I think the Alex Caruso signing was underrated. A lot of people are talking about DeMar DeRozan and getting Nikola Vucevic from, last trade deadline, and obviously Zach LaVine, and how those 3 work together, and then putting in Lonzo Ball as well. Not a ton of people talking about the Caruso thing, and I think he's going to make a big impact for them as well. This team is deep now. They've got a lot of star power, and I feel like these pieces do work really well together. So I'm going to have Chicago in this tier with some of these other teams. I'm very comfortable, putting them next to Atlanta and Boston. And then the Atlanta Hawks as well. This is a team that is very, very young legs, and they went all the way to the conference finals last year. I think they have room to build on that, and they're just going to be, they're going to be better in the regular season than they were last year. I think I'm comfortable saying that. Even though they were the 5 seed, I think they'll probably be, in the 4, 5, 6 range. They could maybe even get a little bit higher than that. I could see them as high as 3, but there's a lot of good teams in the Eastern Conference, so that's where I'm going to slot the Hawks for now, but obviously the potential to make another deep playoff run. They did it last year. They definitely can do it again. And then from the Western Conference, I think I'm only going to have one team in this specific group, and that's the Denver Nuggets. I don't think they're going to be able to get the 1 seed without Jamal Murray because he's going to miss most of the year, but Nikola Jokic is absolutely good enough to carry them. He just won the MVP, obviously, and they're a deep roster. Michael Porter Jr., a lot of other veteran role players, just extended Aaron Gordon. They'll have him in uniform for the full season. So I fully expect that this Nuggets team is going to be, almost as good as they were last year. Maybe, just a little bit worse. Obviously, Jamal Murray was a really big piece of what they do, but I think they can keep chugging along without him, even though, he's obviously a really important player, but I still think they'll be okay. So I'll put the Nuggets in that slot for 3 through 6, and that's what I'm going to do. And I think, honestly, everybody else is going to go in the threat for the 1 seed. Let's talk about the Eastern Conference. We have these 4 teams. I would order them... If we're talking about the 1 seed, I would probably order them like this. With Milwaukee at the top, Milwaukee and Brooklyn both have the thing, and I'm gonna say this about the Lakers too, but they both have the thing where it's a veteran team that's already had success in the past, players who have won titles. Of course, Brooklyn, as a team has not won a title, but Kevin Durant has, and Kyrie Irving, assuming that he does play at some point, and that, also adds to the uncertainty of Brooklyn, right? And James Harden, yes, he hasn't won a title, but he's been around the league for a long time. So I feel like the Nets are a team that could potentially, take a couple of regular season games off, kind of coast a little bit, similar to how, KD was when he was with the Warriors, where they finished at the 2nd or the 3rd seed a couple of those times. And when time comes for the playoffs, these teams tend to ramp it up. But I think that applies to the Bucks as well, given that they're coming off the NBA title, and Giannis could potentially coast a little bit this regular season. Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, they have these guys. They know that they can do it. They know that they can come together. They did it as the 3 seed last year, so I think that this is a team that could also be a candidate for that. So both Milwaukee and Brooklyn have a ton of talent, and of course they're capable of getting the 1 seed in the NBA, but I just have my doubts about them, taking nights off, which is totally fine. But that's just, if we're talking about who's going to get the 1 seed, that's where I think we're going to land. The Heat honestly could also be in that conversation. They have veterans, Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, but this is a, sort of a team that just barely kind of got thrown together, right? They added Kyle Lowry, a couple other pieces in free agency. The core is still together from last year and the run that they had made to the finals a couple of seasons ago now, but I think adding Kyle Lowry means that they're going to have to go through some experimentation. But once they get it together, they should be at least, giving their effort in the regular season, because that's just what these players do, right? The Heat are known for, Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, Bam Adebayo. They always give their 100% every night. So I think those guys are going to be out there trying to win. And then the 76ers... Ben Simmons, toss my hands up. I have no idea what's going to happen with him. If he's in uniform and playing, they're obviously really good. They were the 1 seed last year. But if they do make a trade, or if he's going to hold out still, who knows? So I'm hedging on the Sixers. I have no idea if they're going to be competitive for the number 1 seed. I think they're clearly still a playoff team, of course. Even without Ben Simmons and even without a trade package back for him, they're still going to be really good. But it's just the simple fact is you got to throw up my hands. I have no idea what's going to happen with them. And then let's just throw these Western Conference teams in here. The Suns and the Jazz also could be teams that take regular season nights off. That's a theme with a lot of these teams up here. Also the Warriors and the Lakers as well. I think all 4 of those teams, a lot of veterans on these squads. And simply put, specifically with Golden State and the Lakers, teams that have won titles before, so they might, feel the need to take the regular season games, a little bit less seriously. Golden State, there's definitely more urgency than there is with LA, given that Klay Thompson's not going to be back for a couple of months, and they've been, kind of out of it for a couple of years now, so they might feel like they have to prove themselves again, and so they could be a team that is really good in the regular season. They could, if they get it rolling, get on a nice win streak, and then Klay Thompson comes back, they're definitely a threat to, just be really good in the regular season. So I could definitely see them up there. Like I said, the Jazz and the Suns are obviously both really good regular season teams. The Suns went to the finals last year, but have a lot of veterans, have kind of proven that they can do it. At least the Suns have proven that they can get to the NBA finals. Jazz might be out for a vengeance, looking to prove something again, but they did just get the 1 seed last year, and so they might kind of realize that that's not the most important thing in the world as long as they're ready for the postseason. So this is how I have it, loosely ordered. Like I said, this is not the end-all be-all of how I feel like these teams are going to land, but this is loosely how I have it. So that's my tier list for NBA regular season standings, I guess. So adjusted it slightly, that play-in threat tier, just kind of reordered them loosely how I would have the order. But yeah, this is my tier list. So that's my final answer for how I feel like the standings are going to work out. I guess if we extrapolate this, I have in the Eastern Conference number 1 Bucks, number 2 the Brooklyn Nets, number 3 Heat, 4 Sixers, 5 Hawks, 6 the Boston Celtics, 7 Chicago Bulls, and at the 8th spot the New York Knicks. And then for the play-in teams, I guess the Wizards and the Pacers, with the Hornets on the outside looking in. And then in the Western Conference, I have the Suns as the 1 seed, Jazz number 2, Warriors number 3, Lakers number 4, Nuggets at number 5, Portland Trailblazers number 6, Grizzlies 7, Mavericks 8, Clippers 9, and let's see, the Timberwolves as the 10th spot, I guess, is what I have them, with the Pelicans just barely missing the play-in tournament, and then the Kings and the Spurs kind of looking from the outside as well. So this is where I think it's going to be. Obviously, I don't anticipate being right because things change, injuries happen, trades happen. Things are going to change this season. And I'm sure that we'll see a wildly different picture at the end of the year than what this is looking like. But this is where I'm at right now. Obviously, things are going to change pretty quickly. But yeah, NBA season's starting soon. I'm excited for it. But yeah, that's all I got today. So like I said at the top of the video, if you are new, don't forget to subscribe. Leave a like, ring the bell if you want to. Leave a comment letting me know what you guys think. And I will talk to you guys in the next one.